Hello there, what is going on, everybody? We've got some Armada news to talk about, and it's real news. There's actually some changes and pretty cool stuff. Minor stuff, but it's still cool to see Armada actually being talked about fairly consistently lately by Atomic Mass Games, which is super exciting. So we have a new Errata document for Star Wars Armada. I'm going to talk about it. We'll run through it. And while it's not a whole lot of news, there are some changes. We're going to talk about those and why this is a very good thing for Star Wars Armada. If you guys are new here to the channel, we are still giving away a $25 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. And be sure to check the links in the description below. I'd love to have you join our Discord. Great family-friendly Discord. We can talk about the game. You can share lists, ask questions. We also talk about other games like X-Wing and Legion, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Games Workshop games, lots of games, all of that stuff in the Discord, and it's very family-friendly. And I would love to also have you on social media and Patreon. Go over to Crabbok.com, get some free Armada content over there, all that good stuff. Let's go ahead and just go ahead and dive in to the errata. So, Friday, Atomic Mass Games dropped a news update for Armada. There is a new errata document, and it was just an Armada. It wasn't like, oh, everybody got an errata document. No, this one was just for Armada, which is kind of exciting to actually see some new rules changes. There may be a new rules reference guide in the works. Incorporating some of the frequently asked questions and some of that stuff into the game. Who knows? But this is definitely a good sign going forward. So today's little window is right here. All right, so we're going to talk about this. I will put a link in the description below. So if you look at this, maybe your first reaction is like, well, they didn't highlight what is new. And this is kind of I guess maybe something that I've been noticing from Atomic Mass Games is when they do put out new stuff, they don't, Fantasy Flight used to highlight all the new changes in blue. Atomic Mass Games doesn't always do that, although they have done that in some cases. But that's not usually how things automatically get done here. And that's okay, because I'll be doing it for you, but certainly I think a lot of people are like, it would be much easier if they did highlight the new changes in blue. And Atomic Mass Games, if you are listening, that's just some good feedback for next time, perhaps. It'll certainly make the community's digestion of these documents a little bit easier to, kind of like patch notes, But in lieu of that, I'm happy to kind of go through everything and work on that with you guys. So one of the things you're going to notice in this errata document is that this is primarily going to seem like it's for everybody who did not purchase the upgrade card collection, because it is the errated version of all of the cards that were changed, whether it was a points cost change. Let's just say most of the cards. There is a couple of things in here that are not necessarily like that, kind of have you scratching your head a little bit, because now granted, every card was changed a little bit because they changed the physical size of all the upgrade cards. So every card was changed. Some of the terminology and symbology on these cards was changed a little bit. Like you have electronic countermeasures here. And that's, instead of just exhaust, it's like, oh, here's this new exhaust symbol if it doesn't come back automatically. Brunson up here, that's the exhaust symbol if it does come back automatically. And if it doesn't come back automatically, this is the new symbol, right? So like that new symbology and stuff was applied to a lot of things, but for cards that had like points changes or wording changes, they're going to be here in this errata. Now, those of you who have the upgrade card collection probably won't need this, but it is still nice to make this available because the upgrade card collection isn't a mandatory purchase. And so this is a very good document to have for all those new things. Now, it also means that, potentially new prints of stuff might be getting the new cards or whatever, but they want to, we don't know that for sure, but what we do know is that here is a document for everybody who has all the older, smaller cards that might need to reference it, especially if you're in a tournament and somebody has an old version of a card and they're like, well, point to me where the errata is. How do I know it's changed? Now you have an official source where you can point to the errata. But there are some changes. Now, first thing I'll talk about, one thing that is maybe potentially a little strange in here. It's the Leia Organa officer. I think this may be a slight mistake because she's completely unchanged. Her wording is identical and her cost is identical. However, there is a new Leia commander who had a point reduction. And I believe they'll probably update this errata at some point because they were supposed to put Leia Organa, and since it is still Leia Organa, it's still the same name. It's just the officer instead of commander. I think this one just ended up getting put in here by mistake. But that's the only kind of anomaly that we can see there. But if you look right next to Leia Organa, you'll see Moff Jerjerod. So Moff Jerjerod probably has the most significant change, and granted, it's still a small change, but it is significant, especially to me, because I have used Moff Jerjerod an awful lot. So what Moff Jerjerod says is, while a friendly ship executes a maneuver, during the determined course step, that ship may suffer 1 damage to change the first yaw value of that maneuver to 2. Now, that might not sound like it's a change to you. But what has changed with Moff Jerjerod is they have omitted until the end of its activation. Basically, Moff Jerjerod, even with the 1.5 updates, Moff Jerjerod had still said that when you do this, that yaw value remains a 2 until the end of its activation. This posed 2 problems. At least 2 problems that come to mind for me. Let me know if you have used Moff Jerjerod and if you have ever used this. The first would be in the case of something like engine techs. So let's just say I was doing, of course it does require you doing nav command, but let's say maybe I had a demolisher and I had a nav token. And I didn't need to do a full-blown nav dial, but I had a nav token. And so I maybe adjusted speed or just spent the nav command, but I wanted to do some crazy turning shenanigans, and I go ahead and I trigger Moff Jerjerod for my first maneuver. I take 1 damage to my rear shield, and now I got my first yaw value is 2, and now I can do a real tight turn. Hey, since I did a navigation command, I can also trigger engine techs and do a speed 1 maneuver. Guess what? My speed 1 maneuver is now going to still be a turn 2, right? So Moff Jerjerod could have potentially given me 2 moves with the 2 yaw for only 1 damage because his effect lasted until the end of my activation. And I don't think that was the intent, but there's even another way to abuse it. And I used to do this with the Super Star Destroyer, since Moff Jerjerod is usually run on the Super Star Destroyers. He's one of the most popular commanders for the SSD. And if you use Ozzel as an officer, Admiral Ozzel says that at the start of the first round, you may execute a Speed 1 maneuver. Very great officer to have. Love Ozzel. Definitely gives slow Imperial ships a little bit of, a single slow Imperial ship a little bit of flexibility. But it used to combo pretty nasty with Moff Jerjerod, because what I would do is I would execute a Speed 1 maneuver. While you're executing a Speed 1 maneuver, you do have a determined course step. So as per written with Moff Jerjerod, I could suffer 1 damage, change that first yaw to 2, which on an SSD is pretty significant because it has no yaw at all. So I could get a really sharp turn, and that's why Jerjerod's so great on an SSD. But because I'm doing this maneuver outside of my activation, Moff Jerjerod's effect lasts until the end of my activation. So that means when I activate later on in the round, I still have that Jerjerod effect for only having 1 damage. So I can then trigger him again during my determined course step during my activation, because I triggered him during a special effect at the beginning of the round. And so I don't think, and I remember posting about this. I talked a little bit in my Discord. I talked a little bit in the Armada Discord. And I think it was eventually brought up to Crabbok, and I think it was brought up. It may have been asked by other people on the Atomic Mass Games rules reference kind of question and answer site, the rules forum. So I think this is the cleanest change to Moff Jerjerod to make sure that he works as intended. And even though this hurts a combo that I used to run, I think it's a good change. I think it makes sense. I think this reflects how Moff Jerjerod was intended to behave. You're going to pay each time you want to get that. You can still do that. It's just you're going to have to pay each time you do it. I would also wager to say that a lot of people were probably running it that way anyhow. But this again, it's just a little cleaning up of the rules. And this is a good thing for Armada. This isn't something that a company who's canceled a game is doing. Like you don't tighten up the rules, to make them future proof. This is future proofing for Jerjerod, right? So that's pretty cool. There is another change in here. Let me see if I can find it. It's going to be, and there are also older changes are in this document as well. You're gonna look at some of these guys and like, wait, what changed on Jindin and the Lambda? Well, they changed the way relay works a long time ago, right? I could make the case that a lot of this other stuff should potentially change too, like maybe every squadron with intel, since intel was changed, so there's little things like that. Armed station was originally printed backwards, like with the dice were flip-flops, things like that. Rhymer was one of the early cards that were errated. A lot of stuff was errated. And again, if you have been out of Armada for a while, definitely check this out. This is an important list of changes of things that came out with the Clone Wars and Armada 1.5. Certain cards that were crazy have been changed a little bit, but we've already talked about those quite a bit. I was mistaken, and I had posted online, and like, Slicer Tools begins the game exhausted. And it was pointed out to me, it's like, no, that one's already been that way. And I'm like, oops. And I realized I had still been running Slicer Tools. I guess I missed that first line of text, so I thought that was a funny thing. But that one is not changed additionally, so that one is good. The other change is Grav Shift Reroute. This one is a very minor change. Might not have any effect on you if you run Grav Shift Reroute. I don't think it has any effect on me. But here's what it says. Before deploying fleets, place one Grav Shift token anywhere in the play area. After deploying fleets, you may move each obstacle at distance 1 to 3 of the token to within distance 1 to 2 of that obstacle's current location. Obstacles cannot overlap tokens, obstacles, or ships. So what is that? What change was it? A very small change, but they changed it. A Grav Shift Reroute used to be to within distance 2 of that obstacle's current location. Now, why was it changed from 1 to 2 versus just 2? That's a great question. What happened in this case is due to other rulings that had been, like the Invisible Hand ruling specifically, which drops squadrons at a range 3 bubble, or range 2 bubble. Basically, when something says within distance 2, it can't be within distance 1, right? So like it has to be within that 2 bubble, and that's pretty tough because some tokens may not fit in that bubble. So I think most people were saying within 1 to 2, but because of an existing precedent for the Invisible Hand rule, which said no, you have to drop the squadrons in this ring, like in a donut formation, but not in the donut hole, but only in the donut bread and sugary topping, especially with your the glazed donuts. Oh man, now I want a donut. Now I want a donut or a Lucre Hulk. I want a Lucre Hulk donut. Anyway, before I get too far off topic talking about donuts and Lucre Hulks, which sound great, both of them, although I'd rather have a Lucre Hulk than a donut right now. Let me know what you would rather have in chat. This is what you come for, right? The nonsense, the tangents. No, but seriously, so this was just changed to be more consistent with the way it was intended to be. You can move it from 1 to 2. So anywhere in the entire. So this is like a jelly donut. They turned it from a donut into a jelly donut because jelly donuts are completely solid, right? So that's the best analogy ever. So they changed it from a regular donut to a jelly donut, and now you can go inside. Which I think most people were doing anyway, because most of the time when we look at something within distance 2, you're thinking, all right, you think of jelly donut, but it's actually, it used to, because of other rulings with Invisible Hand, that there are donut rulings and there are jelly donut rulings, and this one is now a jelly donut ruling, and that makes sense. Again, a lot of those obstacles wouldn't have been able to fit within a donut ruling, that narrow little range 2 band. Good luck trying to fit a station in there, right? So so in that case, since you couldn't fit it in there, I guess you would have just had to have not moved it. So this just makes sense. Again, good changes, good tidying up of some rules that were, I wouldn't even say sloppy, because Armada has really stood an incredible test of time, but some spring cleaning on the rules to make them tighter and more future proof. Well, that's going to do it. I'll put a link in the description below if you don't already have the upgrade card collection. if you got friends who are, have older or getting back into the game, this is a great way to get yourself reacquainted with some of the changes. A lot of these are just points changes, but again, we talked about these already in Armada. It was 1.5 gunnery team. It was a big change, right? It requires the concentrate fire now in order to work, and it's only for your next attack. So SSDs aren't going to be able to do 3 shots out of the same arc anymore. Mon Carin requires concentrate fire. Mon Mothma's changed a little bit to work with evades. Commander Leia got a points reduction. Ordnance experts is only 2 black dice. Slicer tool starts exhausted and needs an engineering token to unexhaust itself. Quad turbo lasers is a modification. What a terrible change. That's one that needs to be, like, if it's going to be a modification, it needs a point cost reduction. But Yavaris is got changed significantly. XI7's got changed a little bit. Demolisher's in here. Demolisher got changed. Avenger got changed. A lot of that stuff. Gallant Haven was an older change. Garm Bel Iblis got changed, and some of the older changes. Riken was an older change. Flight controllers got a change a little while back to prevent some ambiguous wording that some people were trying to take advantage to make it like work over and over, like multiple times for a single activation, which was kind of silly. And then a lot of other points adjustments. Avenger got Brunson went up significantly. A lot of little things like that. But mostly we've talked about all this stuff already. Constantine got changed. Still don't see him getting taken that often, but he's a little better. And I kind of like incremental changes where they just make somebody a little better. Just a little better. Because you don't want to make somebody like, oh, now he's broken. You don't want to break stuff. You would just, and if they ever do another big set of changes, maybe you could push Constantine just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Like, just keep going until you get him. And if you go too far, then you come right back. But you don't want to do big, like, oh, well, let's just make him a 19-point commander. Like, that would be super. Could you imagine if they made a 19-point commander? Because that means you'd be able to take a 33 hull SSD as your list. That'd be something. That would be something. All right, well, let me go ahead and wrap this video up before I ramble too much. I get very excited when there's Armada news, as you guys can probably tell, as we've been talking about donuts and jelly donuts and all that good stuff. All right, I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Of course, as the Armada news breaks, I will keep bringing it to you. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this channel possible. Thank you for your continued support. I will talk to you all later, and may the Force be with you, and don't eat too many donuts, but just have a few, enough to keep you happy, but don't get sick.